You're listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, if you could, please leave us some feedback on wherever you get your podcasts from, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever. It really does help us out a lot. This is episode 73, where we talk about dressing for concealed carry. We cover things like how to dress around your firearm, how to minimize printing, and what to do if someone actually spots your firearm. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 73 of Range Minded, the concealed part of concealed carry. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined by
the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
The legendary Edmund Fitzgerald, all the way in eastern Idaho.
So I think I've said this before. Every time I log on to record this, I usually throw in some ridiculous name. Yeah. And Mark knew who the Edmund Fitzgerald was.
I do know the Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah, I didn't know it ended up in eastern Idaho, but there we are.
Well, Lake Gitchagumi is a long ways away. But.
Speaking of eastern Idaho, I was there last weekend, and it's a beautiful place, man. You live in a beautiful area.
You didn't even stop by. I am so hurt.
It was out of our, away from our route, unfortunately.
I doubt it was that far off of your route.
We saved 8 miles by going the other way.
8 miles, continuing a friendship. 8 miles it is.
Well, to be fair, so I was on a motorcycle camping trip, and we went to Jackson and Yellowstone and all that. But the last day, we went from Island Park, Idaho, all the way back to Boise in one day.
So, first of all, what did you think? Was that your first time in Jackson, or you'd been there before?
I'd driven through it on my way to Boise back, a couple of years ago, but spent some time in there. What a beautiful place, man. Jackson
is really cool, and there's a lot to see. There's an exorbitant amount of money in that town. Like,
oh yeah,
you get out of town, you get out of the tourist trap, and you just like drive around and check out some of the palaces that people live in. It's pretty amazing. In fact, the city of Jackson, or maybe it's the county of Teton over there, they have a moratorium on you can't have a house bigger than 19,000 square feet.
Oh, just 19,000 square feet, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And there are lots of 19,000 square foot houses if you get back in. Well, most of them are gated. You can't really get back in most of them, but.
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
I've seen some pretty amazing homes back in there.
Oh, I believe it, man. There were quite a few plots of land up for auction by Sotheby's, so that kind of did it for me there. So
they have a big footprint up there, but it is cool. I like Jackson. I like driving around there. Did you go to the Silver Dollar Bar?
We did not, but we went to Snake River Brewing, and I had a bison burger, and it was delicious.
I don't know if I've been to. Yes, I have. That's right on the main drag, right at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, just by the Harley dealer.
Yeah, they do have a good burger. I have been there.
Yeah, good burger, some good beer. It was, and it's just a beautiful area. It was a great place to hang out for a little bit. Then we went up through Grand Teton National Park, through Yellowstone National Park, and then stayed in Island.
Did you pet any bison?
No, we didn't see any animals, actually.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so we'll have to go back. But then camped.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Then we camped in Island Park and then rode back in a headwind for 320 miles. All the way back to Boise.
Did you take the freeway or did you go back through the desert?
No, we went through, the middle of nowhere desert.
I told you. Once you get past Arco, it's not so bad.
Yeah, we rode all the way to Arco and we stopped for lunch in Arco at Pickle's Place.
I've never eaten there. Was it good?
It's pretty good. It's home of the Atomic Burger. I didn't know that Arco, Idaho was the first town in the world powered by atomic energy.
There's a lot of history in this area that people don't, even people that live here don't even know.
Well, it's funny because, and I'm about to offend everybody from Arco, but I go to my buddy, I go, you know why this was the first place powered by atomic energy, right? And he goes, why? He goes, because if it blew up, nobody would have noticed.
Funny thing, I was just going to mention something. That was the first, the site out there, the National Laboratory, was the first nuclear reactor meltdown in world history.
Yep, I actually I read about that in Atomic City, and the first, I think, nuclear-related death in the U.S., right?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? All here in Idaho.
And nobody knows.
Or nobody cares. It was a big deal. Like, obviously, it was a big deal in the, was it 60-something? I can't remember.
I think it was late 50s, early 60s or something like that, yeah.
That was a huge deal. In fact, a friend of mine, his grandpa was one of the ambulance guy, one of the first responders to help pick up the bodies, and it was pretty interesting. He was, and I don't, this is obviously kind of hearsay or whatever, but I was told that on the way back from Arco to Idaho Falls, the hospital got a hold, radioed the ambulance driver and said, "Nope, don't bring anybody here. Turn around," because the radiation was so high. And they were already dead.
Radiation sickness, though, for everybody else, though,
It was pinging so high, they actually buried the ambulance and everything out there.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Little known history. There you go. If you're not from Idaho, if you're listening and not from Idaho, look up Arco and Atomic City. You'll learn all about that stuff. It's pretty wild. Some untold history there for sure.
And another fun fact is they're going to build a microreactor, electronic reactor generator, whatever you want to call it, out there again.
Oh, really?
Yep, it's already a go. I'm excited.
Wow, that's actually a good thing. I'm a fan of atomic energy, so.
Me too. It's super clean.
Yep. So, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Side note.
Yeah, that's just our little Idaho history there. We are talking about concealed carrying and maintaining proper dress for concealed carry. Make sure that you're not printing as much, making sure that you are keeping it concealed, why that's so important, and some other things as well, as if somebody does see your firearm, what you can do about that. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah. So I'm assuming, I don't know all the demographics. I'm assuming that majority of our listeners are from Idaho. I
would have to agree. However, I think we've gotten some European listeners as well too, which I find fascinating. But that's it's another story for another day.
And we have Aussie Chris, so a lot of this may not apply to those folks.
But yes, what you're getting at is that state by state, the concealed carry laws vary, yes. And if there are places where there's no open carry, to be blunt about it, if you show your firearm and somebody notices it, and you're not in a gun-friendly state, that could be considered brandishing.
Well, and chances are that's a felony, and you're going to lose your rights, spend some time in jail, and it's a bad day.
It's a bad day all around. So, luckily in Idaho, I think to your point, what you were going to say is that we can open carry just as freely as we can concealed carry here. So we're kind of protected by those rights, thankfully, to be able to, if it does end up showing your firearm or something like that, you're okay.
And Idaho really is, and I know we've said this multiple times, Idaho is, if not the most gun-friendly state, it's very high up there as far as preservation of our Second Amendment rights, the gun culture, the manufacturing community. Idaho is a huge stronghold. I know a lot of people say Texas. Texas is a big state. They do have a lot of stuff, but I don't know, per capita or something. Idaho's pretty amazing.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Texas doesn't necessarily have an open carry policy either, or maybe not the friendliest.
They might. I guess I should have looked it up before I opened my mouth. I don't know if they're constitutional carry or not, actually. And there are a lot of new constitutional states. Like they're that at least is taking some traction.
Yeah,
and it's happening more and more. I think we're at like 13 or 14 now states. But nonetheless, there's the states with a greater population and a higher concentration of the opposition that are really pushing back and causing problems.
Yeah. So a quick jump on the old Google says that according to opencarrytexas.org, that as of January 1st of 2016, you can carry a handgun openly as long as you are licensed by Texas or in a state with reciprocity. So we could open carry in Texas as Idahoans.
Now that's pretty awesome. That's definitely something that they have on top of Idaho.
Yeah. How about that?
I guess you can still open carry in Idaho if you're hunting or whatever and you're from out of state, but at least I'm pretty sure.
Sure. But I remember, at least in Illinois, that, if you showed your firearm by accident, whether you're bending down to get something or whatever, you get some serious trouble, especially because maybe you're carrying in some place that you're not supposed to,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and speaking of which, like this, did we talk about this last time? That guy in Walmart in Arkansas. Did you see that video?
We may have mentioned it, but it's probably worth mentioning again.
So this guy's shopping in Walmart. He's open carrying in Arkansas. You totally think that's
probably pretty normal
in Arkansas. There shouldn't be a problem. Well, somebody called the cops. It was not long after the Walmart shooting in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody called the cops, and the cops showed up. And they even said, hey, we're here because there was a shooting in Walmart. A lot of people are hypersensitive. And the guy's like, that's exactly why I'm carrying is because I don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. Well, the cops, instead of saying, hey, can we step outside to talk about this or whatever, they decided to make a scene in the sporting goods section. And it's like 6 police officers.
Oh, wow.
And they told the guy, hey, you need to take your gun out of your holster. Or they take his gun, one of the two. I didn't see that part of the video, but the cop ended up with a firearm outside of the holster and lecturing the guy why he's not allowed to carry inside Walmart.
Huh.
Well, guess what? Walmart may or may not have a policy listed out front, and it does have to be posted on the front of the store, not just on their website.
Right. That's like if you ever go into a Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever, I think anywhere in the country, it'll say no firearms allowed. Yeah,
it has to be posted. That's a federal law. So these cops are pounding him about how he shouldn't be carrying blah, 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 while retaining his firearm. So he's got a Second Amendment violation. Now, Walmart can make their own rules, whatever. They're a private organization or a private company. They can do whatever they want. That's totally cool, and I respect that. But the cops decided to jump across the Fourth Amendment and take his property without cause. He ended up with his gun back, but still it's dancing right on that line of Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, because you could make an argument where they were taking it just for their safety because they don't know, what could happen or whatever. But at the same time, it is a fine line, I guess.
Well, in my opinion, they caused a health and safety issue by removing that firearm from the holster.
Oh, sure, because you have to assume it's loaded with one in the chamber, and any kind of mishandling would end up in a negligent discharge. But
and if that cop would have pulled that trigger on accident, damn Skippy, I would be highly involved in a lawsuit against the whatever department, whether it be sheriff's office or city police or whatever. I'd be highly involved in a lawsuit, and I think the chances of that individual winning would be pretty high.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, so that's kind of what that's not what brought up this topic to my mind, but that in conjunction with some other things that we probably won't talk about tonight, but Mark knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But we figured we'd start with the why, because we wanted to highlight why it was so important to make sure that concealed means concealed, and there are some situations, and we don't condone it necessarily, but there are some situations where maybe it says it's a gun-free zone or you're not allowed to carry or something like that. And that's up to the business or whatever. Obviously, some like federal buildings and post offices and places like that where it's illegal to carry no matter what. Obviously we respect the laws of those places, but there comes a point sometimes, depending on what it is, that just concealed means concealed, and if nobody knows, is none the wiser. Then and you can read about that online on a lot of different people's opinions. Is that if concealed means concealed, then that's where we'll leave it.
Yeah, and maybe we should break it down like stupid level for a minute. Not saying our listeners are stupid, but really the difference between concealed carry and open carry. Now that should be pretty obvious, but maybe there's some people listening that maybe they're not, pro Second Amendment, but they just happen to be listening. So open carry is just that. That means my firearm is visible to anybody else. Hopefully in a holster. If somebody's open carrying but not in a holster, they're not Magnum PI, they're retarded.
Sorry. I
probably shouldn't say that.
That's okay. Probably shouldn't, but it exemplifies the situation.
They have a mental deficiency, then don't understand the importance of carrying a firearm properly.
Let's just say they shouldn't be carrying a firearm. How about that?
Now, concealed carry, because this could actually get cloudy, and you kind of touched on it. So concealed carry is just what it sounds like, right? I'm carrying a firearm or a weapon for that matter, the self-defense weapon, that nobody knows I'm carrying. It's covered up, it's concealed.
Right.
Now here's a fine line, and this is actually part of the law for Idaho allows 18-year-olds to keep concealed carry now. And this is kind of why that law exists. If it's cold outside and I went archery hunt and I happen to have my 10 millimeter Glock open carry, but I decide to put on a jacket because it's cold, and that jacket doesn't cover the entire holster, but it covers most of it. that is considered concealed.
Yeah, like you said, it does get a little bit gray. And so, even if you have the bottom of the holster or the barrel sticking out from the bottom of the jacket, it still counts as concealed. And
that's concealed. And that's why there was such a problem because there were 18-year-old kids getting a felony conviction for concealed carrying.
Because they had a jacket on.
Because they put a jacket on it, and it was silly.
Yeah, it wasn't that young kids were trying to get away with something. It was just a matter of kind of the outdoors lifestyle and things not, just not working out, or kind of the laws being made ambiguous, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes on purpose, I think.
Could be, maybe, but that just goes to show that sometimes the best of intentions lead to not the best of consequences in real life.
Yeah. So what are the pros and cons of one or the other? Well, the pro of open carry is usually you can retrieve that firearm a little bit quicker.
And right? It's more comfortable.
And you can carry a larger firearm.
Sure. What else? Let's see. Yeah, comfort, accessibility, choice of handgun is usually a little bit better. But at the same time, if it's accessible to use, and it could be more accessible to somebody who's not supposed to get it because they can see it on you.
I was steering the conversation towards. That's exactly the problem. Is if you plan to open carry, have you worked on weapons retention? Have you taken any classes on that?
Right.
Because that's a real problem. Was it Michael Brown, that kid that got shot in the cop? That whole lawsuit, I can't remember where it was. Michael Brown was trying to take the police officer's firearm out of his holster while he was in his patrol car.
Right.
The kid was a big kid. So open carry makes you a target.
It can make you a target. Yep. And even stepping back from weapons retention training, do you have a holster that has more than just a friction retention? I mean, if you look up, and we won't get into it too much, but there's different levels of retention: level 1, level 2, and level 3. And
level 3 being the most secure.
Right. And do you have a holster if you're open carrying that has level 3 retention? Because if I were open carrying in public, that's the only way I'd do it.
Yes.
And even as an RSO, my holster has a level 2 retention, just because you never know,
And there are some holsters that are much better at retaining on level 2 or 3 than others, and that's a different show.
That's a whole different episode.
But be mindful of that. That's a problem for a lot of folks. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. My mind's going 100 miles an hour. Did you see? And I think we even talked about this. We did talk about it. When Greg Pruitt from the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance went to the fair.
Yes.
The Western Idaho Fair.
Yes, and he was open carrying, I believe.
He was open carrying.
We talked about that in the last episode.
He caught a lot of flack.
Or 2 episodes ago.
But he was very uncomfortable walking through the fair open carry.
Yeah, he didn't even want to do it.
Yeah, and his reasoning is he always had to be thinking about that gun, where it was, making sure nobody was going to take it. It's way more stressful.
Well, because just the honest truth is that somebody can just come by behind you, and especially if they know, kind of can have some time to look at your holster and see if it does have some retention or not. That you might be able to figure out how to get that weapon fast, quickly away from somebody else.
Yeah, it's super, and. Yeah, it can be dangerous.
Yeah, and that's the big con that a lot of people, where myself included, don't want to open carry, unless you're at a range or something like that. Like obviously for being an RSO or anything like that, then you'll open carry. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, if I'm teaching a class or working the range, I'm gonna have my gun visible, because in that case, I don't want to make it sound like an intimidating factor, but in that case, I really want it to be a deterrent. I guess that's a better way to put it.
Oh, sure.
I want it to be a deterrent for anybody to do something stupid. Not because I have a God complex and I think, hey, I've got a gun and I'm better than you. It has nothing to do with it. But if somebody wants to do something bad, then they'll understand that they're going to have some resistance.
Right. And I think there's a safety in numbers there, where if you look at everybody who is open carrying at a gun range, it's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, if you're dumb enough to shoot up a shooting range or a gun store, well, either you're brave or stupid, and there's a fine line there.
Right.
I wouldn't, but yeah.
So, but anyway, so let's moving back to concealed carry is, the pros and cons of that is, it's a little bit more uncomfortable, especially depending on your body type. Could be harder to access. The size, and this is arguable, but the size of the gun that you can carry is limited to a degree, just depending on how you carry. So there's a little bit, and you have to train a little bit more to move kind of garments away from the firearm so you can access it a little bit better. So there's a lot of different cons to it, but the pros is that and it's the opposite of the con of open carrying is that, if you do it right, nobody knows that you have it.
Yeah, and that's the exact point of concealed carry is I know that I'm keeping my friends and family safe if something is to arise, as long as my training level is up to par. And that's a key. You mentioned training, getting that gun out of the holster, whether inside or outside, or concealed or open carry. I mean, training is a huge issue, and we've hit that pretty hard over the last year.
Yeah, but, I'm sure we sound like a broken record with that regard. Is that, or in that regard, that training is paramount for anything.
Absolutely. But like you're saying, the pro is I always have my life-saving device with me wherever I legally can carry.
And the other thing is that nobody knows.
Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that.
Right. And so there are a bunch of different ways to carry concealed. You can carry, kind of behind the hip is a big popular one. You can carry appendix, which is the official carry method of the Range Minded podcast. And then you could even, I even thought about, 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock carrying it just right on the hip, and even shoulder carrying if you really wanted to.
When I got my my first 1911, I was all about finding that fantastic Don Johnson shoulder strap holster with some mags on. Oh man. And honestly, I still wouldn't mind it, but I wanted to be able to wear a jacket and carry my 1911. I've kind of graduated from that thought process because now what I do carry now has the same capacity and it's so much lighter.
But so it really depends. And so to get back to the subject of the episode is about dress and keeping it concealed is that, you really kind of need to dress around the gun and your carry style. At least in my opinion, if you need to carry how it's comfortable to carry or else you're not going to, and you kind of need to dress around that. And
that's kind of a deterrent for a lot of people, honestly, to conceal carry is they don't want to have to change their wardrobe.
Right.
And sometimes you do. You're going to have to change how you dress.
Well, and that's the thing is, maybe there are some days that you do carry and some days that you don't. There's a school of thought that believes that you should be carrying any and every opportunity you can, but sometimes you either just can't or the situation doesn't call for it. And, you can wear more fashionable clothes in those regard, or in those situations.
Yeah. And in years past, you always knew who was concealed carrying because it was the old guy wearing the old, like a fishing vest with his polo shirt on, or not his polo, but his Hawaiian style shirt on and a little bit baggier pants. You always knew who was carrying when they come into the gun store. Yeah.
Or if they're adjusting their waistband or anything like that, you know, but I think it's come a long way since then.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah, and let's dive into that a little bit. At least first, let's talk about just what to wear. Almost is, you don't want to look obvious. You can usually, I think nowadays, instead of the big Hawaiian shirt and the fishing vest and all that kind of stuff, it's the tactical pants with the slightly too big polo shirt and the obvious coyote brown hat and the Oakley sunglasses. Yeah. I'm painting a pretty stereotypical picture, but I'm sure everybody's seen somebody like that when they're going out and about, and you can almost guarantee that they're carrying,
Yeah. I have a pair, and the other thing was brand of clothes too, and that takes me in what I'm gonna say. Well, but so I have a pair of 511 jeans,
right,
that I absolutely love. They're not cheap, but I love them because they have some hidden pockets that are kind of sewn into the seam of the waistband that'll fit a full-size AR magazine.
Really?
I freaking love those pants. And I wish that more companies would do that. And there probably are other companies out there. But they just look like a trendy pair of jeans that I can slip in a pocket knife and a mag and nobody knows.
Right. And that's the thing, is that you can dress like a normal person, or like how you normally dress nowadays, without having to scream tactical or anything like that. You know what I mean?
And I would discourage the tactical look, because that's been such a stereotypical look now that most people, hey, that guy's got a gun, I'm going to shoot him.
Right. Or, he's going to be the first target, even if you don't, you want, at least my philosophy on it is the gray man kind of thing. And we've touched on it in a few episodes before, but the gray man kind of is just somebody who blends in, who doesn't stand out for any reason, and can kind of get in and out of crowds, no problem, because there's nothing obtrusive or nothing that stands out about somebody like that. And that's kind of what my philosophy is. If I can dress kind of my normal style, without anybody noticing any different, and I can carry, then that's the way for me to do it.
And there's a lot of companies that have kind of monopolized off that thought process. So like Travis Haley I don't know if you guys know who Travis Haley is or not. YouTube him. He's a pretty cool guy.
He's a big deal.
He came out with one of his backpacks that was just gray. No Molly webbing on it. I mean, it does not look like a tactical backpack at all. But, you open it up and it's got all the accoutrements you need to be Johnny Cool on the spot.
Yeah, I believe it's called a Haley Incog, isn't it?
I don't know if it's the Incog. That's a holster.
Oh, I feel like he has a backpack that's got the same.
Maybe.
Yeah, Incog discreet rifle bag.
Yeah, it's super cool, right? You got it pulled up. It's a nice looking bag.
Yep.
But it doesn't scream, hey, there's an AR pistol inside.
Yeah, it screams sports bag instead.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies capitalizing off of that. And same with clothing. We kind of touched on, like my 511 jeans that I have. There's a lot of other companies out there that are finally catching on and making the little less tactical look, and a little bit more urban carry look, which is totally cool.
Right, because like I said, it's important, at least in my opinion, to blend in and to not draw any attention to yourself.
Well, think about walking downtown Boise on a Friday night. Like, if you dressed up like a lot of the guys that come into the shop, you're gonna get looked at going through downtown Boise.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same kind of dress.
No, you're going to get it. That's more of a trendy hipster area, especially on the weekends.
Like how I dress.
Yeah. So you're going to blend in way more. You're going to be a lot more gray man if you just change how you dress a little bit, kind of mellow out the tactical stuff.
Right. And one thing, that I learned from somebody is that you can dress the same style, but maybe just size up your clothing, size up a pair of jeans, or size up a shirt or whatever size, or a half size if you can.
Well, I've had to do that just because I'm getting fatter, but that's absolutely true. Buy an extra inch or so in the waistband.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more room.
Well, and you want to do that anyway if you're going to be carrying, using a pair of pants to carry or something like that. You got to consider that width that a firearm puts, on your waistband or whatever. But which leads me to my next point, actually. The most important part, I believe, of concealed carrying effectively is a belt.
Yes.
There's
if not a close second, it probably is the most important, because that's going to change how you feel by the end of the day.
Right. Not only that, it's also going to be the one thing that supports your gun the entire day, because if it's a heavy gun and you have a belt that you got from, Kohl's or something, not that Kohl's has bad belts, but you need something thick and sturdy, to be able to hold that gun up all day, or else it could flop out and, or heaven forbid, come out of the holster because you bend over and that belt can't handle the weight,
I remember the first time I carried my 1911 outside on the hip all day long.
Uh-huh.
That was completely awful.
Oh, I bet. And the other thing, it pulls on your pants and puts pressure on places that you didn't even think about.
Yeah, those crummy belts, they fold over, they give, and that forces that gun from your hip down a little bit lower, and it just adds pressure in the wrong places, and it's just not comfortable.
Right. And then again, that goes back to if it's not comfortable, you're not going to do it.
Yep.
So a belt is important, possibly sizing up. The other big thing to consider is, whether or what kind of well, funny I said it without saying it, but the weather. You really have to consider the weather. If it's the middle of summer, right, or the end of summer right now, 95 degrees. If you're wearing a sweatshirt or a hoodie or some kind of jacket, you're going to stand out, and people are probably going to be able to tell that you have something to hide, for lack of a better term.
Yep. I remember this guy in Idaho Falls I met a few years ago, and I think he's actually getting a patent on it because he finally figured it out. But he just took like an ulcer belt? Is that what they're called? Just like the squishy waistband stuff that kind of squeezes everything tight.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Almost like a back brace, only it's all squishy,
right,
or stretchy. His wife must be a seamstress or something, and she actually sewed in some holsters. Or a holster and some mag caddies in there.
Yeah.
And he said he carried, I think it was an LCP at the time, and he could play basketball. He says it was awesome. He could wear his basketball shorts. Nobody ever knew.
Yeah, I can't remember what the band is, but I am pretty sure I have one of those, and I've tried it out. It actually works quite well. Is it the Ultimate Belly Band holster or the
Maybe.
Oh.
I don't know, and I know there's some other ones out there now, and hopefully that's his company. Like, hopefully the guy got it figured out. And that's his.
No, I think we're talking about the same person, and I actually have one of those. And to talk about summer carry for a little bit, maybe sometimes you're just wearing athletic shorts, or you're wearing just tighter shorts in general or whatever. A belly band's actually a pretty good option because a lot of times people don't wear belts.
Yeah. Yeah, and you might have to change the size of your gun too. You might have to drop down a frame size.
Yeah,
nothing.
And some advice I would give to somebody who wants to try concealed carrying for the first time is start when it's cold out, because you're wearing a lot more layers, and you can get away with a lot more.
I'm not going to tell you where my mind went on that one, but yeah, okay.
What, start in the winter because it's colder?
Yeah.
And there's more clothes?
Outside. Yeah, that's totally it.
For your first time?
I was in the pool.
But you have more layers. You can fit a bigger gun. You can kind of dial in your concealed carry rig a little bit better when it's colder outside. You can wear a jacket. You have an excuse to wear a sweater. I usually wear hoodies all the time, in the fall I like to wear like kind of like a plaid, like kind of a plaid shirt, and that's a great cover garment for concealed carrying.
Yeah, I think so. I have a sweatshirt that I absolutely love. I don't even think they make it anymore. That I can put my hands in the front pocket.
Yeah, but
it's got like a kangaroo pouch in there, which can get me to my appendix carry. Like I just finagle my way around the pocket, and I can get to my appendix carry. I love that sweatshirt.
There you go. Yeah. See, and that kind of leads me to my next thing, is where a lot of people just. There's a lot of different ways to carry, you know what I mean? And you have to find what works for you, and it might not work for you in the summer as it does in the winter.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's totally different. And I heard that all the time at the store, hey, it's wintertime. I can carry a bigger gun. Heck yeah, you can carry as big as you're comfortable.
Yep. And that's where we get into capacity and all that kind of stuff, but you have to try different things out. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I think for me, like I have a lot of holsters, and I think that should be the progression of everybody that's starting to carry. Is you buy one holster and you kind of graduate out of it, and there's things you like or things you don't like, and you buy another holster, and that cycle just happens. For some people it happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because I think that helps you identify what's best for you, because it just so happens that we do have very similar holsters, but I have a lot of other holsters that I had before this point.
Right.
And it's just kind of a progression you got to go through. I didn't carry the gun I'm carrying now in the beginning.
Yeah, and that's and we're going through all these details, and I'll get back to your point in a minute, but we're going through all these details because A, it has to be comfortable for you to carry, and B, you have to make all of these considerations so you don't accidentally brandish your firearm if you're in a place where you can't open carry. You have to try out different holsters, different guns. You have to see how your body fits, and your body changes, as you get older, or maybe in the winter you put on some more. You put on some more pounds or anything like that. So you have to find what's comfortable for you, and that takes time, and unfortunately that takes money. But once you find the right system for you, then you can run that pretty good. For a long time.
It is pretty sad that it's not inexpensive. It does cost money. I mean, there are some inexpensive products out there, like we talked about belts. You can buy, a $15 belt, absolutely, but you're going to be disappointed with it.
Well, so yeah. And people
got to be willing to spend some money.
There's good people too out there, like Nick Hoffer. We'll give him a shout out with his Ultimate Hybrid holster, where, if you get a new gun, you don't have to switch out your holster because it fits, 200 holsters or something like that. And you can use that as kind of a starter to concealed carry and see what fits for you and all that kind of stuff.
And that is a great option. And for Nick and Terry, that was an awesome move for them.
Oh, for sure.
Because that opened a lot of doors for them and other avenues. And that's something for them to talk about, not me, but that was a good choice for them because there are so many options with that holster. In the long run, I don't think I would carry that holster permanently, but it is a great holster.
Yeah, but if you're trying something out new, or maybe somebody's new to concealed carrying or whatever, I think whatever makes it easier to start that habit and all that. Because that's the other thing too, is that once you get used to it and you don't even, even if you have the right gun and the right holster, and you're not necessarily worried about printing, or you're not worried about, something that firearm becoming, or leaving concealment, you'll forget it's there.
Yeah.
And only it takes a couple hours. That's or true. Not even going to the store, you're walking around the store, you're more focused on getting your bread and your milk or whatever. You're not going to think about the firearm being there even, if you're used to it and you have the right kind of holster and the right everything kind of dialed in.
The right setup. And that's one thing I do like about Nick's holsters, the Ultimate Hybrid holsters, because it's soft and malleable. It flexes with your body. And I do really like that about that holster because it is a little bit more comfortable to carry.
Yeah, it's got that memory foam kind of deal on it. Man, he's going to love us.
Hey, it's free advertising. It's all good.
Yeah, and speaking of Nick, I still have to post my picture of my Walther P1 holster that's left-handed outside the waistband Kydex that he made custom for me.
I'm excited to see it. Yeah,
we'll put that on. Hopefully, I'll remember to do that between then and now. But so anyway, to get back to it, you want to dress discreetly, like we talked about. One other thing is, and we haven't defined it yet, so maybe we can define it. But we want to minimize printing, and what printing is exactly what it sounds like. It's where the fabric of your garment kind of outlines your gun. So your gun's not showing, but everybody can tell what it is.
And that really does come from choice of clothing.
Oh, sure.
I think. And it might be the method of carry too, or the position of carry. So it's important to think about it. Another thing I've noticed is I'm way more hypersensitive to me printing than anybody else is, even my wife.
That's a great point. I was going to bring that up.
Because we're so worried about somebody seeing our gun, we think we're printing all the time. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe that helps us guard our firearm more than normal. I don't know, but just be mindful is most people aren't looking, man, I don't want to sound crass, but aren't looking at the bulge in your pants, right? That's not what's going on.
Right, or they're not looking at your butt if you're carrying behind the hip. And that's the thing, most people's noses are kind of buried in their phones. Nobody's really paying attention to you. And 9 times out of 10, unless you're me, you're not that good looking.
So I remember, that makes me think of, and I think I shared this before, I took a low light class one time.
Yeah.
And the instructor, and mind you, it was dark in the range, right? And the instructor was having us, we'd shoot whatever 3 rounds, whatever the drill was, and then we'd use our flashlight to do our left and right checks, right?
Sure.
Our threat checks. And one time he was standing behind us quite a ways. I mean, probably 20 feet behind us, but he had his knife out.
Oh, wow.
And he says, "How many of you guys noticed that I had my knife out?"
Nobody. Yeah.
So we're not as observant as we should be. And so the general public, and I think gun carriers are usually a little bit more observant. So you talk about the general public, like you're saying, they're too busy playing Angry Birds or whatever, updating their relationship status or whatever you want to call it on Facebook to even notice.
Right. And the other thing I'll say is that, when you're either looking in the mirror, or looking straight down or behind you, whatever, you're seeing yourself from an angle that a lot of other people don't see. Nobody's going to be looking straight over your shoulder down at your junk or at your butt or whatever. So you might look like you're printing, but to the general public, you're not. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just throw a t-shirt over it and you're good to go.
No, you do have to, because sometimes what's really going to happen, like, for example, right now, like I know I can see where my gun's printing.
Right.
But it's not the butt of the gun or the grip of the gun that's sticking way out. That's a totally different issue. Like if I can tell that you're carrying a Glock 19 without you even showing it to me, then you probably need to change your pant size, your shirt size, or your holster.
Yeah, that's a problem. So a couple tips to kind of help with that is consider the not only the fabric that you have, because lighter fabric will print a little bit easier, a little bit heavier fabric. That's probably why a lot of old guys wear fishing shirts, because they're a little bit heavier fabric. They are a little bit more. They don't fold as much, or and kind of fold and buckle and stuff like that. So it's not going to print as well. But one thing that I can personally attest to is, patterns over solid colors. So if you wear, like plaid or stripes or even Hawaiian shirts, again, we're going back to the old guys. I guess they got it figured out. They just make it too obvious.
But don't get me wrong. I love Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, I do too. I'm a big old fan. I have like half a dozen of them in my closet.
My wife won't let me buy any, but nonetheless, sorry, that's a different story.
But those, the patterns of those shirts break up how the fabric falls, and so it's going to be harder for somebody to notice, a bulge in your on your side or on your hip or in the front of your pants or anything like that. They're not going to be able to notice it as well, because it's the pattern is making it too busy. So, like I said, that's why I kind of have it's kind of like a button down, but kind of not. It's kind of just like an overshirt. That I like to wear. It's a plaid shirt. It looks cool. I would wear it whether I was carrying or not. But it does a great job of kind of being that extra cover garment.
Yeah. And it's a good idea, I think.
Yeah, so that's important.
Mix them up a little bit.
But also, speaking of cover garments, you do have to be training with moving that cover garment or moving your shirt out of the way, because even if you do just have it, let's say you're super, super skinny, because we haven't even touched on body type at all, but it's easier to conceal a handgun if you're a little bit smaller or skinnier. Especially appendix carrying, you have less to kind of get in the way,
right.
But you still have to train to move that shirt out of the way and clear, so you can get a good grip on that firearm and present it properly.
Yeah, just do some brainstorming for a second. Think about what could go wrong with getting that shirt in the way of your draw. Like, there's a lot that can go wrong.
There's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot of things to shoot from straight down to 2-3 degrees away from your body,
not including not including your femoral artery.
Yeah, I mean, your entire leg structure. That's a big target, because you're so close to the barrel that there's a lot to hit there. Yep.
So you want to keep that in mind and make sure you train with that, with your situation. And you can train in different ways too. Maybe, the appendix carry is comfortable, but you can draw better back from the hip or something like that. You have to just train and practice with that to kind of see what considerations you have to make. So. Yeah, but those are some tips to kind of to prevent, or not necessarily prevent, but to minimize printing, to hopefully prevent you from displaying your firearm inadvertently. But let's get into what happens if that does happen. Let's say
this is kind of the core of what this podcast episode came to mind is what happens if or when somebody notices you're carrying a gun.
Yeah, let's say you're at Walmart and you reach up something, or maybe you trip and fall, or any number of things that could happen, and somebody notices that you're carrying a firearm. What do you do?
Well, luckily I've never had this happen, so let me I have to kind of think about what I would do personally. First of all, am I in a place where it's legal to carry? Now, when I say legal to carry, I mean not a federal building or something that's federally prohibited.
Right.
Because to me, that's not a no. Anything outside of that is not a no. Boy, that sounds really illegal in a way, doesn't it? But most of these places are private property. The worst they can do is just to ask you to leave.
Sure.
You might get a trespass ticket, and that's the worst. That's not a felony. It's just having to deal with the cops, and it might get to be a pain in the butt, and maybe even a lawsuit.
I would say 9 times out of 10, most people will just ask you to leave. And I think first and foremost, we should say, don't get argumentative. Do not cop an attitude or anything like that. Yeah, be calm and kind is top of mind.
As a concealed carry holder, we have to, as a general rule, we have to be level-headed, respectful, and compliant. And unless it's something, obvious life-threatening or something, I don't know. That really is your call. It's not my call when that situation happens. I may handle something different in 2 different situations. But you need to be respectful, because we stand as a we are the Second Amendment in these people's eyes.
Right. And we've said it the last couple episodes, but we'll say it again. You have to be a good steward of the Second Amendment in order to, help kind of change people's minds that there are a lot of good gun owners out there.
Yes. And we have to be that good gun owner.
So I thought about one situation, and maybe you're in Walmart or whatever, and you're reaching up for something and somebody sees it or whatever, or asks you or gasps or something. Obviously I think the best thing to do is just say, hey, it's okay. I have my permit, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to see it? The permit, that is, not the firearm. And like you said, remain level-headed and calm and kind. I think that's the best strategy that you can have. And I think depending on what state you're in, like in Idaho, for example, I don't think people would make a big deal about that. I can't say the same for other states in the union, but
yeah, I've seen people open carry in Walmarts on both sides of the state.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Same here.
No problem.
Yeah, people don't usually make any comments about that or whatever. But if somebody tries to make a scene or threatens to call the cops or something like that, still want to maintain kind of level-headedness and be calm and all that. The last thing you want to do is exacerbate the situation or make a scene, yourself. Yeah. Yeah, and like I say, the worst thing that can happen in that instance, in the Walmart instance, would be they ask you to leave or you get a trespass ticket. Right. And, one thing we should say here, we should have said it a little bit earlier, but we'll say it now, is that obviously we're not lawyers. And, the first thing you should really do when you get your concealed carry permit is to study the laws and know what the laws are, not so you can get in an argument with somebody, but, what to do and where you can and can't carry. And if you choose to carry somewhere that maybe you're not allowed to, what those consequences are.
Yeah, ignorance is no excuse. So, if you happen to walk into a hospital or something, that could turn out really, really bad for you. Right.
Or a school or anywhere you're not supposed to.
Yeah, that won't turn out the way you want it to.
No, and you'll be arrested. So, one thing I did read online, I don't know, and you could tell me if you agree with this or not, is, if you are carrying and somebody calls the police on you or whatever, that it might be a good idea to call the police on your own behalf preemptively and explain what the situation is.
Yeah. And here's why I would agree with that. And maybe more so if it's a defensive type shooting, or even if you have to, a defensive use, let's just put it that way.
Sure.
You definitely want to call the cops, because usually the first person that calls is the victim, if that makes sense. Whether you're not the victim, you are the victim or not, usually the first person that calls will be assumed as the victim, even if it's a bad guy. Hey, this guy just pointed his gun at me. You guys need to come. Well, he may have left out the part where he tried to rob you.
Right, or steal your car or whatever.
Yeah, so it probably is a good idea to inform the cops and say, hey, you know what? This is what's going on. Be honest. Tell them who you are, your phone. Obviously, if you don't know how to make a 911 call, maybe that's a totally different episode. But be specific and descriptive in what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we kind of spent the first chunk of this episode talking about the prevention of this, because if you take the time to know how your gun moves with you, you have the right holster, you have the right clothing on, you won't have to be in this situation. Like you said, you've never been in a situation like that. I've never been in a situation like that, but it does happen.
And unfortunately, I think it's more and more likely, as the years go by and just the climate of things right now, I think it's more and more likely of something like that happening. Some of the cops being called on you.
Right.
I did have a friend of mine, a very, very capable instructor, retired law enforcement, very, very capable person. He told me a story. Somebody asked him, well, why are you carrying a gun? And he just turned and said to the lady, hey, so you don't have to.
That's pretty good, man.
I carry so you don't have to.
What was her reaction to that?
I can't remember. That story was so long ago.
Oh man, that's a good one.
The other thing is too, is like my firearm doesn't discriminate. Like I'll save anybody.
Right.
As long as it's not the bad guy or girl that's doing harm.
Right. You can save anybody. Yeah. And that
side note, I'm sorry, I think I have ADD tonight or something. Have you seen that video? And it's got to be in Europe or something. This large woman, she's a big gal.
Uh-huh.
She's walking by. There's a mom and dad. Each of them are walking along the sidewalk. Each of them holding the hand of their little kid. One has a little boy, one has a little girl with them. Okay. This lady takes, it looks like a butcher knife, and she goes to stab the first little kid, and she must have had the knife backwards or something because the kid looked like they were okay. And the mom's like freaking out or something, and the lady turns around and then goes after the other kid.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
And the dad, to me, the dad's a coward. I don't know what I'd do in the situation. I mean, obviously, maybe in the heat of the moment might be different. He goes to do something, right? Like, and she just turns around with the knife, and he cowers like a child himself. And
that's crazy.
She didn't run. She just walked away, sauntered off, like no big deal.
That's
he didn't
crazy.
do anything. He couldn't do anything because he was scared because he didn't have the training. I showed my son that video this afternoon, and I'm like, hey man, I don't know exactly what I do, but chances are that lady would have a pretty bad evening.
Oh yeah.
Because I if somebody tried to attack my kids like that, it'd be tough to hold back.
But that goes back to the training thing, whereas that you need to have that training to deal with that kind of stress level and those situations, because you have to inoculate yourself from that kind of stress.
And it happens so fast.
Right, exactly. Faster than you can think of. And, that's why there's concealed carry training and all kinds of training that you should take. So,
yeah, if that guy was concealed carrying, he could have addressed the situation in a moment.
Right. And you know what? That brings up another good point, is that, you have to, as a concealed carrier too, you have to be willing to take that responsibility of not only defending, your life and your family's life and people's lives around you, but you have to realize too that you may end up in a situation that day where, somebody's going to call the cops on you, and that you have to be, ready and willing to deal with that situation in a professional manner where, it ends good. It ends well for everyone, but you have to be willing to take that responsibility and know that might happen,
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I didn't really think about that until I told you my mind's been darting all over the place. I remember when Idaho became a constitutional carry state, and I know I've shared this before, but the kind of people that decided they were buying firearms to carry, there was a lot wider group of individuals, attitude and abilities that were coming into buying firearms for defensive use. A lot of them, I shouldn't say a lot. There's a segment of them that just figured because they could now, they would,
right,
without any training, and that really, really scares me about the constitutional carry side of things. And I understand you can't legislate a constitutional right, or you shouldn't. But that always made me nervous with the constitutional carry stuff, of the caliber of people that are going to start carrying or have started carrying just because they can, which is great. I'm glad we live in a country where we can, but again, get some training. Don't just assume because you shot your whole life you can handle yourself in a situation, because you might get it wrong, and if you do, it's not going to be good for you.
It's bad news bears, and that's the thing too, is that, you know, I think taking a class gives you that kind of mindset. It puts you through that mindset. Like, is this really for me? Is this really what, you know, the responsibility? Can I handle this responsibility? You know, having a firearm and carrying a firearm is not an end all be all or a panacea to save your life. You have to know how to use it, and you have to know how to deal with it, just, you know, as an everyday thing you carry. If you can, you know, that you have to know how you move with it, you know, to not make other people uncomfortable, or, you know, to get the cops called on you, and that you're safely using it too. We haven't even talked about safety, but it kind of goes without saying. You know?
Yeah, it's there's so much responsibility that comes even from the minute you fill out your paperwork and you pass that background check. There's an immense amount of responsibility that you really need to think about, and you should have thought about before you start buying the gun.
Yeah. So, but the plus side of it is, if you already are concealed carrying and you haven't done any training, you still can go get training, obviously. That's what we highly recommend. It's never too late to do that, and I think you'll learn a thing or two. Yeah,
get your butt out there and spend some time, because it's important.
Yeah. So I think we'll close on that for now, though, unless you had anything else.
I don't think so. Just and I did share a video earlier today on our Facebook page. And I even said I kind of danced around some of the things that were on my mind, and I'm still going to dance around them.
Sure.
But just remember that as a citizen of the United States, you are granted certain rights, and one of those is self-preservation. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. It never did. It had everything to do with keeping the government in check, which makes me think of a conversation we had with somebody a long time ago, but I'm not going to get that crazy. Don't get passive on that, right? We're seeing so much pushback now, even from the Republicans, from the president, from everybody that want to circumvent the Second Amendment in every way possible, and that really hurts me, because it's the initial Bill of Rights. It's what those men went through to fill out that document to give us something for the future, and if we don't jump on board and take care of stuff, we're going to lose it. So don't let anybody tell you can't carry in places that you know you can. Let's put it that way. And be responsible.
Yeah, know the laws, get the training, make sure you take the time, spend the money to make sure you're doing it right, and you know, don't give up your rights. Fight for them. And you know, I think we've talked about it before. You know, the Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, so your local Second Amendment, you know, foundations, the Second Amendment Alliance here in Idaho. Make sure you support those people, because they're doing some good work.
Yeah, get out there and be proactive. Take somebody shooting. Share that passion with firearms with other people, so we can keep going with that, right?
Yeah.
It's getting difficult.
Yeah, man. So, all right, well, we'll close on that for now. But, you know, if you have any questions about the concealed carry or holsters or anything like that, shoot us an email, podcast@iishooting.com, or find us on social media @Range-Minded Podcast.
Yeah.
And leave us some feedback, any episode suggestions, anything you want to send us, really. We read it all, so.
Yeah.
But, but thanks
as long
for
as it's nice.
If
it's rude or derogatory or anything like that, that usually goes into the junk folder.
Steve reads it. I don't.
I'm just kidding. I take it very personal.
He responds. Yeah. So
I would, if somebody directed. Let's try that again. If somebody directed something to me, I'll respond. I ain't scared.
Oh yeah. Don't poke the bear on that one. He's from Eastern Idaho now.
Yeah.
It's a rough area over there.
I'm a bald man with a bad attitude.
Oh boy. So, all right. Well, we'll close on that. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.